right. So the flight school. How did you learn to fly a fighter?
Flight school was amazing. The first thing they did was they put a chip behind my left ear,
Uh-huh.
where that bone comes out. It, I wear glasses on Earth. I could not have worn glasses there because the chip would have been in the way.
Okay.
And it resembled a Bluetooth. So it was about that big. And it was about 2 inches long and maybe an inch wide
Okay.
and stuck out to the edge of my ear. So it was a good sized critter and it was stuck directly into the bone
Uh-huh.
of behind my ear. And it connected to some part of my brain
Okay.
with a wire.
Mm-hmm.
And what it did was it connected me to the ship's computer, where that I became a function of the ship. So at that point, I was human but cyborg, at, over more human than cyborg, but I was definitely part of the computer.
Okay.
So we were a unit
Mm-hmm.
rather than me as an individual. And there was also a chip that would have been here, and it was star-shaped, and it produced a visual where I didn't need a window or a screen.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever whatever the ship needed me to see would appear. It looked physical to me, but it wasn't. Nobody else could see it.
Right.
And it would give all of the temperature and wind and everything you needed as a pilot. And if I were on the base and saw someone, it would give me all the information I would need about that person, name, rank, duties,
Mm-hmm.
and whether or not they were a friendly. So there would be a lot of Americans I would see that were not in, well, we called it Malsische Heimschild, Martian
Uh-huh.
Home Shield. That's what we called our militia. Um, and Mars Defense Force was under us.
Uh-huh.
So if we had met, real, if we had met on Mars, which we didn't,
Uh-huh.
Randy would have been answering to me.
Oh.
And I flew air support for his crews before I left.
Uh-huh.
That was my last year in Shula, was when they were teaching me to do the ship. My first ship looked a lot like an F-15,
Uh-huh.
except instead of having a jet engine, it had plasma engines.
Uh-huh.
Plasma engines were new technology when I was put in the ship. So that would have been 1974 when
Uh-huh.
I was put into the ship and graduated from Shula to Mersische Heimschild as a pilot. And my unit was called the Valkyrien. That was amazing. I don't know how to explain it. Sitting in the cockpit, I had a mouse,
Okay.
was shaped to fit my hand. And as I moved, the ship moved. 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I had another set of, it feels like a joystick that I used to fire weapons. And I would get this whole set of printouts, and I would tell the computer mentally what we were looking for on this mission. Because I would be sent out for different things. I was sent to find raptor nests, basically their homes, and destroy them if they were small, or if they were a cluster, I was to get backup. I would also be sent out on ghoul duty, Ghoul,
What's that?
because for the audience, a ghoul is someone who frequents cemeteries and steals bodies.
Yeah.
Okay. My job on those missions was to find human remains and bring them back to the base, because we had regeneration tanks and we could bring them back from the dead up to 4 months.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I brought back a lot of the Mars native humans
Mm-hmm.
because the raptors liked to eat them. And yes, there were humans there that were so much like us that the computers picked them up as us.
I see.
And so I would be looking for humans, Earth humans,
Mm-hmm.
and end up with a lot of the Mars humans too. And so we regenerated a lot of their people. And they were a very spiritual, pacifist people. And their women were basically worshipped as the life givers,
Mm-hmm.
and went around bare-breasted
Yeah.
because the milk was considered, staff of life. And in their culture, they would not have been bothered. But of course, Earth humans, being who we are, a lot of them were raped by both Germans and Americans. So they soon learned that if Earth humans came into their territories they would just up and move. They didn't want any part of us. And I can't blame them. But we would revive them, put them in clothes, drop them off wherever they wanted. Some of our people would try to figure out how to talk to them. Their language is really similar to Sumerian.
Okay.
And
Do you know if they migrated from Earth or some of them migrated from Mars back then? Why do we have a similar language with the Earth Sumerian?
okay, I've heard the history of the galaxy surrounding Earth
Mm-hmm.
from four different ET races.
Okay.
The only thing they have in common is that humans as we are today were created out of Homo erectus by adding ET genetics to us.
By whom? The Anunnaki?
Every group says it different.
Okay.
The Anunnaki call themselves Shahami,
Mm-hmm.
and they claim they created us. But so do the Zetas, who the American government calls Ebens,
Uh-huh.
and so do the Lyrans, and so do a human group called the Atlans, and 22 others. The Draco even claimed to have had a finger in the pie, that's why we have a reptilian brain. So I'll just say there's 25 different groups of them that all claim to have created us, and they all wanted the Germans to kiss their asses because of it. And the Germans basically said, you should have been better parents, leave us the fuck alone. You know, if we don't know who you are, piss off. So that's Penny's potty mouth.
Did you regenerate a lot of American soldiers there on the surface?
Yes.
Uh,
We regenerated a lot of American soldiers. However, we found that most factions were using clones.
mhm.
So when we regenerated the body, there was no mind.
I see. Okay.
Because they grow the clones so fast that the mind doesn't have a chance to develop. And when the clone is killed, the consciousness that has been impressed into it goes back to its natural body.
Oh, I see.
So you're left with an infant in an adult body.
Amazing.
And we ended up with a lot of those. So
what did you do with them?
I don't know what they did with them. I really don't, because if they had left them for a 4 or 5 year period, taking care of them like an infant, they would have developed a mind. So I don't know what they did with them. They may have raised them. I don't know.
According to the MDF people, they could only revive a person if they were dead for several hours and if there was enough electrical activity in the brain. What you're saying is basically it could be head or no head, a piece of tissue?
It had to be like at least as big as a finger.
And you could fully revive the body?
Up to 4 months.
Up to 4 months. And if it wasn't a clone, the consciousness would come back and it would be a normal person.
It would be a normal person if they'd only been dead a week or less.
Mm-hmm.
And at 4 months, they had no memory.
Oh, I see.
So,
okay.
But it was tapered in between.
I see.
So if you got them at 2 months, you'd have some memory. They might know what their name was, who they were. But
I see.
My job was to bring them back anyway and let the medics figure it out. Now, we used the technology that belonged to the Mantid Empire. Mm-hmm. And we were leasing it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what the payment was.
So the Draco themselves did not have that far advanced.
They did not have that. They did not have that particular technology. Right. We had that from the Mantid Empire. We're not the same as the Mantids on Mars.
I see. And they are separate from the Draco. Also, they are
also separate from the Draco.
Okay.
And they are incredibly good healers. And most other races are terrified of this technology because it's based on black goo.
Right.
The gel is made out of black goo that has been, the sentience has been taken out of it. Mm-hmm. So it's had, if it were a human, it would have its head chopped off. But it's concentrated nanobots that are tinier than the nanobots. So they're very tiny, tiny little robot things. And the Mantids have basically turned it back into the servant that it was meant to be in the first place and have programmed it to heal. Mm-hmm. And there's a computer that's on the outside of the tank. Mm-hmm. And you give it a drop of the blood if you have it. and it gets enough of the DNA to be able to repair the person or whatever race it is based on the DNA.
Amazing.
And it's amazing because that's what they had, one of those at Langley. That's why they didn't have a problem with killing us, is because they could put us in the tank and bring us back.
But
And
it doesn't repair the psyche, does it? If you
no,
went mad, it wouldn't repair you, would it?
no.
Okay.
That's why when the kids went catatonic,
Right.
they were destroyed,
No.
because they couldn't repair that.
No. Okay. The raptor incident at school that we kind of missed. Can you describe that? The time when you became a hero for a short while.
Yeah, I was a miscavert.
Mm-hmm.
I was an abortion that lived until this one day. The guards must have failed because the raptors came through the wall of the cafeteria.
So it's all
And
we're talking all underground. The cafeteria, but every room is underground, and they basically broke in from a tunnel or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The entire base, except for where the planes take off,
Okay.
is underground, because Mars gets these god-awful sandstorms that will go around the whole planet for months on end, and they build up a static charge that is so high that lightning bolts hit the two moons, Phobos and Deimos.
Okay. Wow. From Mars.
From Mars, from these storms.
Okay.
And it just circles the planet, and the effect of that system going over your base is basically like getting an EM pulse that takes out all of the surface electronics. So anything that's sitting on the surface is going to be destroyed, useless. You'll have a beautiful pile of trash. And the pilots were expected to fly above this and try not to get hit by the lightning and find a base that they could go to and be underground with their ship during these things. So everybody was basically housebound during these storms. So I don't know what happened, but the raptors came through the wall, and I hadn't been there very long, a year or two, so I was no more than 11 when they came through the wall. And this was the first memory that I got back with my memories being restored. It was the one that was slapping me in the face, was raptors, Mars raptors, coming through the wall at us. And they have 6-inch claws on they have 3 fingers, no thumbs. So they have 6-inch claws like a regular raptor. And they were going through and killing kids. And my instinct was to put up a shield, and like a bubble shield, force field, around as many of us as I could. And we were still in that when the adults figured out there was a problem and came in and started fighting back. Okay. And they took out the raptors, and finally, when everything was calm, the force field released, and we were out of it. And the adults went and redialed and rescued everybody that had been killed. So no one was lost.
I see. How is it done? Do you like? I mean, the redialing. Do you suddenly have it as a memory, and you know that it happened, but now it didn't happen because you're living in another time version? How is it activated, and what do you feel during that?
It's like they're using personal portal tech.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a limited area that they
Mm-hmm.
are actually going. They're actually going into hyperspace.
Right.
And when you are in hyperspace, your timeline is like a river in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And you have stepped up onto the bank.
Mm-hmm.
You're watching the river still flowing beside you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go
Upstream.
uphill,
Upstream. Mm-hmm.
upstream, which is back in time.
Right.
You can go downhill, which is forward in time. You can pick a different, you can, instead of being on this world, you can jump to that world.
Mm-hmm.
This is how, this is how ships travel in space.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how the Germans went back in time and got their colonists. This is how the Germans went back in time to make their colonies,
Mm-hmm.
because some of those colonies are 400 years
Mm-hmm.
old. And this is the way we redialed to rescue people. On a small operation like this, you had a group of 4 or 5 people with personal portal tech. They stepped out together. They stepped back in time together. They would each grab a kid or 2 and pull them back into present time.
After that,
The rest,
do you
the
remember?
rest of us were unaffected at all.
I see.
We still had full memories of everything that had happened. We just had our classmates back.
Mm-hmm. I see. So you all remembered what happened.
So no, I don't know what they would have experienced.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I had full memory of what happened and forming a force field.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no idea if I actually have that ability in the here and now.
Mm-hmm. Were you taught?
I
Were you taught that before? Do you remember being taught this particular method to put a force field around you?
no,
Okay,
this was something that came up,
by instinct. All right.
yeah, totally by instinct. And I was not taught this at Langley.
Uh-huh.
So this was just, and it was big enough for 40 kids.
Okay.
So it was huge. And the raptors
Yeah.
were raking on it. They were trying to get
Oh my
through.
God.
And it was, this was the first memory that came up. And I knew this did not happen on Earth. And it was just, it took me 2 years to figure out what that was.
Okay.
And once I figured out where that was and how it happened, the rest of the memories started falling into place. It was the 3rd year after my memory was reactivated that I had enough of the story together to be able to talk about it.
I see.
So this was, Tony talks about there being like a pivot memory
Mm-hmm.
that allows you to remember the rest. That was my first
Mm-hmm.
pivot memory,
I see.
was forming that shield. I know that I did something similar last year, this last April,
Mm-hmm.
we were on a trip, and the man we were riding with was not driving well. And he was turning in, he thought he was turning into a center lane, only it was the other side's
Mm-hmm.
turn lane.
Yes.
And there was a car there,
Mm-hmm.
and I picked up the car and moved it to the other lane. I avoided an accident. And it was another case of, it was a total instinctive, I have no idea how I did this, but Lou saw it as well. And we were both sitting there with our jaws just, and the driver goes, "What happened?" "I'm in the wrong lane."
No. Wow.
So
So yeah, so after that happened, what was there any acknowledgement in the colony? I mean, this was a major big deal, right?
this was a major big deal, and instead of being seen as a total pain in the ass,
Mm-hmm.
I was seen as, well, she's different, but she understands community
Okay.
and honor
Okay.
and protect your own.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that was when they realized that I had potential. They still called me a Miskabert.
And for a while, they kind of.
Yeah, for basically a couple of weeks, I was a hero, and after that, I was back to being an American and an outsider.
Mhm.
And
All right, so 15 years of flying over Mars. I know that you spent some time on the surface as well. Did you ever
mhm,
engage either a raptor or a mantis?
I was engaged by a mantid,
Mm-hmm.
a Mars mantid,
Okay.
and um, she read my mind,
Mm-hmm.
and we had been taught, if the mantids captured you, you were not to resist. The Mars native raptors were able to take anything from your mind
Mm-hmm.
that they wanted to at
Okay.
any time. They told us to not even try to resist. So I let her read me. I had been sent to capture her, and at least she had not sicked a spider on me.
Right.
Um, but she let me go, and I don't know. I don't know. I was supposed to capture her for intel, and it ended up she got intel out of me instead. And I reported it when I got back, and they said, okay, apparently I didn't know anything that would matter, or I had been fed disinfo. So they were okay with it. I was not in trouble. Um, and they didn't have to come find me. Usually when they sent me after a mantid, they would duck into a cave, and they have telepathy with the Mars spiders.
Mm-hmm.
Spiders on Earth, the biggest I've ever seen even photos of are about a meter across, and those are in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the ones on Mars get to be 5 meters across, and they're fast. And instead of one set of mandibles like Earth spiders have, they have 2, one over the other. And I can tell you from experience, their venom burns like fire, but not for very long because you die. And I have been dinner for Mars spiders more than once. And my assumption is that my ship would report I was dead and they would send a party out to rescue me, bring me back, because I would always wake up in the regen tank.
Okay. So 15 years, did you ever guys have like a group mission? Many planes together doing something? Like bombing or whatever?
I don't think I remember any of them with more than 5 planes.
Okay.
We had some pretty nasty weapons on there.
Uh-huh.
We had laser cannon, we had missiles, we had something that's basically a tactical nuke.
Uh-huh.
So one of our planes show up, and that was like the cavalry had shown up.
What was the life like? I mean, off duty. What did you do?
I was considered too dangerous to be around civilians.
Uh-huh.
The few times that I was around civilians, they treated me like I was a hero.
Okay.
But it really felt weird. It did. I mean, you're alone in a ship, you're merged with the ship, and then when you're around people, you don't know how to interact with them. I mean, you can speak the same language, but you're hearing their thoughts, whether they know it or not. And a lot of their thoughts are mingled with fear. And the ones that aren't, you know, I never thought of myself as a hero. I thought of myself as someone doing a job that had to be done.
Okay.
I don't feel like a hero now for talking about it. I have this mission to expose the kidnapping and hopefully stop it. There is nothing we do out there that can't be done by consenting adults. So there should be plenty of consenting adults to man all the space agencies.
Oh,
I mean, seriously.
So you weren't allowed to be around civilians then. So you lived in the at the base, at the military section.
Yeah, I mostly lived at the base. We had satellite bases around the planet because of the storms, and they were all underground. It would lift a lid and you'd fly in and then it would close. Everything was underground. That's why so much of the stuff doesn't show up on Google Mars. And the few things that do are blurred because they don't want you to know it's there. But you'll see some weird little brick building out in the middle of nowhere. No windows, just this weird little brick building, maybe 3 meters square, and a door. And you go inside and it's an elevator that takes you down. And you stay there till the storm's over.
And the ship, you parked the ship underground as well, right?
Yeah. Okay. There's a
lid door.
Yeah, the lid. And so you've got the ship parked and you go down the elevator and you check in and you say, storm approaching and I'm here till it passes. And they would assign you local duties to maintain the base. Things like the gardens.
Okay.
Um, it's hydroponic gardens. They're in stacks, and you might be assigned to mining water. There's frozen oceans underground. And so you go chip off, you know, actually you don't chip it off with an ice pick. There's machinery, keep it clean.
Mhm.
And you're not physically working so much as running another machine just to help support your being there. Um, Productivity is a really big deal for all the Martian bases. It's a big deal on all the German ships. It's nobody is allowed to freeload. If you get hurt, you are allowed time to heal, and after that, you're back to work.
Mhm.
It's not like slavery. It's more like everybody pulls their weight.
I see.
It takes a certain amount of stuff to take care of you, and you are expected to put out that much effort. I think the New Agers call it energy exchange.
All right.
So that it's
Right.
you're benefiting, you contribute. That's
Did you have any entertainment there? And
bootleg movies.
okay. From Earth.
We
Right?
did not know where they came from.
Uh-huh.
But I was on a freighter when the Star Wars movies came
Mhm.
out. And we saw those with subtitles. They were in English with German subtitles, and I was on a German freighter. I was the navigator on the German freighter after I left Mars. And we watched the Star Wars, the first three, the first trilogy, and the ships of the Empire and the uniforms, except for the stupid helmets,
Mhm.
were so much like ours
Really?
that we naturally were supporting the Empire. You know, we saw the rebels as these horrid creatures.
Crazy people.
Crazy people, why are they fighting their emperor? You know, go figure. So
So I mean the Germans, did they have any kind of like, I don't know, collective events? Like you have all these duties. Do you have like any festivities? Some like a downtime when everyone's relaxed and whatever.
yeah, the older colonies had, well, Americans would call it soccer. The rest of the world calls it football.
Mhm.
But the older colonies would have soccer
Mhm.
teams, and uh, they would compete. And the games were a really big deal.
Mhm.
And
That was all indoors, I suppose, right? Nothing outside.
it was all
Uh-huh.
underground. Well, some of the colonies actually built on the surface,
Okay.
the ones that were on water worlds.
Oh, okay.
But most of the colonies, most of the most of the German colonies are not in the solar system.
Mhm.
They're they're in the Sagittarius arm of the galaxy, and they are in, okay, you've got the Sagittarius arm makes this loop.
Mhm.
Earth is like in the first third. It marks about the first third. And surrounding it is the Draco Empire.
Mhm.
So we're not in the exact middle, but we're close. And most of the German colonies are between Earth and the rim. So some of them are not even in Draco territory anymore.
I see.
Some of them are free zone.
And those
So
planets are what? All Earth-like planets, inhabitable and all.
they're either like Earth or Mars.
Okay.
You know, they're in the Goldilocks zone, which is temperatures where that you can survive with clothing, with or without clothing. And they all have water, even if it's frozen underground.
Mhm.
They all have enough air that you can function outdoors. You may not be able to run or work outdoors, but there's enough air you can breathe. You know, on Mars, it's like being at 7 to 8,000 feet elevation. I don't know what that is in
Uh-huh.
meters, but it's breathable, but you have to adapt to it to be able to move around.
Uh-huh.
So we wear, it plugs into your nose and it gives you an oxygen supplement.
Okay.
If so, you carry oxygen, but it's not because the air is unbreathable. It's because it's too thin to
To rarefied, right? Yeah.
rarefied. It's like being on it's like being on Mount
Sure.
Everest.
Yeah.
You know, there, you know, actually it's a lot like being on Mount Everest. It's cold, the air is thin, and you have to have some sort of help to survive. But there are places like in the Rift Valley where that there are pockets of moisture,
Uh-huh.
and at the poles there's snow. So in summertime at the South Pole there's liquid water. Um, all those green stripes you see are grasses. Yeah, springtime on Mars is just absolutely gorgeous. It resembles being in northern Arizona.
Uh-huh.
Uh, the dirt is dirt colored. It's, browns. It doesn't look red close up. Um, but there are trees that are like junipers,
Uh-huh.
but leaves are thicker to withstand the cold. There are cactuses. There are shrubs, grasses, wildflowers. Uh, there are birds that burrow. They come out at sunset and they're out for a couple of hours, and they're black and they're about this big. And the sunsets are purple, well, lavender, you know, not red or pink like Earth. Um, they last about an hour. It's really pretty. I grew up on Mars before I grew up on Earth, because when they sent me back, the age regressed me back to 4, because the machine can be set for an age and a weight. So I grew up on Mars, became an adult, and then got sent back to grow up again on Earth. So when I've seen some of the videos of Mars that have been taken by some of the probes, the first one I saw, I just sat there and sobbed for hours. I was so homesick. People don't understand how that can be, that how you can be so homesick for a place that they think you've never actually been. But once you accept the technologies used, that they have time travel, that they can age regress your body back to whatever age, that they can. Well, the biggies are time travel and age regression.
Right. Those are the two key technologies there.
And bringing you back from the dead on top of that. But the time travel and the age regression, once those are factored in, everything becomes possible. And I grew up there first. So that's home. And that explains why I've always felt like an outsider here. Like something isn't right.
Did you go out on the surface when you were still in school? Did you guys have like outings on the surface?
Once in a while, but not really often. They had to have too many guards used to keep us safe.
What was the purpose of it?
It was about biology class, botany mostly because they couldn't count on what kind of animals we would see. Most of the animals on Mars are insects and reptiles.
And reptiles.
Reptiles. Okay. Because they don't require as much air or food or water. Okay. So they survived a lot better than the mammals did. There are not many native mammals or birds there. Rats have come with the Earth humans, and rats come everywhere humans do. And black widow spiders came with the Earth humans. That was a big shock. Those things.
And they grew bigger there, I assume, right?
They grow bigger there because the planet's a little smaller. Sure. They don't grow lots bigger. The black widows are still no more than that. But the native spiders are huge. So, and most of the native animals there either burrow or live in caves.
Did you keep any of the animals at the base? Did you have any animals at the base, like pets or like zoo kind of, display at the base?
The exobiology section did. Okay. We did not have pets.